The following are the 4 firearms safety rules. All firearms are always loaded. Never point the muzzle of your firearm at anything you are not willing to destroy. Keep your finger off of the trigger until you are ready to shoot. Always be certain of your target, backstop, and what lies beyond it. Remember this, a firearm is only as safe as the hands that hold it. Safety must be your prime consideration whenever handling a firearm. Firearm safety is your personal responsibility at all times. Firearms can be dangerous and can cause serious injury and even death if they are misused. There is no margin for error when it comes to firearm safety. In the store and on the range, all safety rules will be strictly enforced. Whenever you pick up a firearm, you must accept that you hold in your hands the power to take a human life, a responsibility not to be taken lightly. A responsible shooter will always handle a firearm in a safe manner by following the 4 basic rules of firearm safety and by using a healthy dose of common sense. Firearm safety rule number 1. All firearms are always loaded. You should visually inspect a firearm every time you pick it up, even if you just laid it down moments before. It may seem redundant, but establishing good habits is important. Every time you pick up a firearm, check the chamber, the cylinder, and magazine while controlling the direction of the muzzle to make sure the firearm is in fact unloaded. No matter what type of firearm you're picking up, you must be sure to check the chamber, cylinder, and magazine. It's obvious that if you remove all the ammunition from a firearm, it is unloaded, right? Wrong. It is still loaded. You must treat every firearm as if it is loaded, all of the time, even if you have just unloaded it yourself. Whenever transferring a firearm to another, ask the person receiving it to open the action or check the cylinder to confirm that the firearm is indeed unloaded. Whenever receiving a firearm yourself, always open the action and verify that the firearm is unloaded. Never take anyone's word that a firearm is unloaded. It isn't. You must take personal responsibility for your firearms and for those persons you permit to handle them. Remember that even those with experience may have bad habits that are hard to break. Firearm safety rule number 2. Never point the muzzle of your firearm at anything you are not willing to destroy. Always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction, because no firearm is ever unloaded and there is a danger to those objects in front of the muzzle. If you can grasp the concept of Rule 1, Rule 2 should be easy to follow. The result of pointing a firearm at another person could be tragic. Never point a firearm at a person or thing you do not intend to shoot, even when simply bagging or holstering the firearm. This includes never putting your hand in front of the muzzle or allowing the firearm to be pointed at any other part of your body at any time for any reason. The only safe way to handle your firearm is to assume the worst-case scenario. Your empty firearm is going to fire. Since you're constantly prepared for this contingency, never point your firearm at anything that you're not willing to destroy. And by following this rule, if there ever is an accidental discharge, then it will not happen while the firearm is pointed at a human being. Firearm safety rule number 3. Keep your finger off of the trigger until you are ready to shoot. A finger on the trigger while reloading, moving, drawing, holstering, or clearing a malfunction can lead to an accidental discharge. Firearms in proper working conditions simply do not fire unless someone squeezes the trigger. Every accidental discharge can be prevented by keeping your finger off the trigger and out of the trigger guard until you're actually aiming at your target and ready to shoot. It can be especially difficult to control your trigger finger while experiencing stress or anxiety. Physiological reactions known as sympathetic reflex and startle response can cause you to unintentionally squeeze the trigger. Your finger should not be in the trigger guard until the instant you are prepared to fire. Firearm safety rule number 4. Always be certain of your target, backstop, and what lies beyond it. You must identify your target before ever firing your firearm. If you are not sure, don't shoot. Also make sure there is a safe impact area behind your target before firing. You can't stop a bullet in midair, so don't fire unless you know exactly where your shot is going to impact. Bullets can travel at a surprisingly long distance and at sufficient velocity to cause severe injury or death. Indoors or outdoors, ask yourself where your bullet will hit if it misses or fully penetrates your target. In review, the following are the 4 firearms safety rules. All firearms are always loaded. Never point the muzzle of your firearm at anything you are not willing to destroy. Keep your finger off of the trigger until you are ready to shoot. Always be certain of your target, backstop, and what lies beyond it. Firearm safety is your personal responsibility. Unfortunately, it's human nature that we tend to forget these rules after years of gun handling without an incident. But a firearm must always be treated with immense respect. A moment's lapse of concentration can lead to a lifetime of regret. Like rock climbing, auto racing, scuba and skydiving, shooting has an element of danger. However, unlike these other sports, the disaster factors are all under the participants' direct control. The safe handling of firearms is always the shooter's responsibility. If an accident occurs, it means that one or more of the safety rules has been violated. We can tell you how to be safe. We can even show you. But in the end, gun safety is your responsibility, and you need to accept responsibility for your actions. Thank you for your attention. And as you focus on safety today during your visit or training, don't forget to have fun.
I know you're getting ready to go out to the range, but before you do, there's a couple safety rules we want to go over. Our first rule is always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. So, don't point your gun at anything you don't want to shoot. Second rule is always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Now, ready to shoot means your sights are lined up and you're ready for that gun to go off. Our third rule is always keep the gun unloaded until you're ready to use it. Unloaded means completely unloaded. There's nothing in the magazine is out of the gun, there's nothing in the chamber, and there's nothing in the cylinder. If you're renting a gun from us and you're not familiar with it or you're not familiar with your own gun, please ask for help. We'll be happy to give assistance. So let's go look at some of the other range rules. All ranges are different and have different rules, so be sure to read them thoroughly. If you have any questions, please ask now. It's easier here than in a noisy range. And if you don't see range rules posted, please ask for a copy. We also require both eye and ear protection. For children, we recommend both earplugs and earmuffs. Either the front desk or your range officer will tell you where to shoot. So let's go have some fun. All right, let's go to lane number 4. All right, I'm going to go over for the folks how to show that a semi-automatic is clear and ready to be put on the table. So when we unbag the firearm, the first thing you want to do is just check inside the bag which way the firearm's pointed. In this case, it's actually not pointed downrange. So I'm going to take an opportunity now to turn the whole bag. So I haven't touched the firearm, now the firearm's pointed downrange. I'm going to take the gun out of the bag with the muzzle pointed downrange, finger off the trigger. In this case, I'm going to take out the magazine since it's semi-automatic. I'm going to check in the magazine well and in the chamber itself to make sure there's nothing in there. If the slide were closed, I would lock the slide back, do the same thing, check the magazine, check inside the chamber. Now, there's 2 ways to set this gun on the bench pointed downrange. One is with the ejection port pointed up so everybody can see in there and know that it's unloaded. Or the other way is with the injection port down, where now you can't see if there's anything in the chamber, right?
And nobody else can either.
Nobody else can either. So in this case, let's always remember to keep it with the ejection port up, with the slide locked back, magazine out. Now, we've gone over the semi-automatic. If you want to go over the revolver for the folks, that'd be great.
So Barry showed you how to make a semi-automatic safe. I'm going to show you the same thing with the revolver. Mine's pointing in a safe direction. Pull it out, finger off the trigger. I'm going to hit the cylinder release. Pop the cylinder out, check, there's nothing in there. Put it on the table facing downrange, and we'll be ready to go.
Awesome. Now, one thing to remember is whenever the target is back and we're checking targets, we always want the gun exactly in this situation, or what you saw us do with the semi-automatic, or whenever we're changing shooters, or whenever we're loading or reloading the firearm. So again, whenever the target is back, we're checking the target, whenever we're changing shooters, or whenever we're reloading. The number one rule is there is never a loaded gun sitting on the bench by itself. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Awesome. At indoor ranges, we're a little spoiled here because there shouldn't be a reason to go past the firing line. The target system itself takes the target up and back for you. Outdoor ranges are completely different. In an outdoor range, the range officer has to call a ceasefire, and you have to hear his instructions before you are allowed to go out downrange and check your target. When it's time to change targets, remember to keep the center of the bullseye of your target in line with the muzzle of your gun when your arms are extended. The reason being, if your target is too high, you're going to be shooting up into the ceiling. If it's too low, you're going to be shooting off into the floor. And if it's on either side, you might be hitting your neighbor's targets, which they might not appreciate. When you want to take a pause between your shooting, take your finger off the trigger, gun pointed down range, and simply rest your elbows onto your rib cage. When reloading your firearm, remember to keep your gun pointed directly down range. Directly down range means parallel to the floor and parallel to the walls. I'm shooting a brand new gun. One of the most fun things at the range is letting your friends share it with you. Before we change, I'm going to actually make sure the gun is fully unloaded, action open, and I'm going to keep the ejection port straight up. Then I'm going to fully step out of the booth and let Jeff step in.
Good shit, man.
Thanks. Ceasefire! When you hear a ceasefire, immediately take your finger off of the trigger, bring your elbows down to your side while keeping the muzzle pointed down range, and then wait for instructions from the range safety officer.
Keep firearm pointed down range. Go ahead and lock your actions back and clear your firearms. Please step back.
In this case, I called a ceasefire, but remember, everyone on the firing range is a safety officer, so if you see anything dangerous that you feel uncomfortable with, call a ceasefire. Your range officer will take it from there. There are many different reasons to call a ceasefire on a range. Just remember, you can call the ceasefire if you see anything dangerous or something you feel is just a little bit off. For instance, somebody drops something over the fire line, goes to retrieve it. Ceasefire! Immediately call a ceasefire. Then wait for the range safety officer to come in and sort it out. What are some other reasons you might call a ceasefire? What happens if somebody drops their gun? Call a ceasefire. What happens if somebody's crossing the firing line for any other reason? Call a ceasefire. What happens if they're pointing their gun in an unsafe direction? Definitely call a ceasefire. Remember, everyone on the range is a safety officer, and it's up to you. Courtesy and common sense go a long way on the range. Here are a few more important tips that help ensure that you have a safe and enjoyable time, and perhaps you'll make a new friend or two along the way. Never touch a firearm for any reason if someone's forward of the firing line. Ceasefire! Always walk around someone else's equipment. Never step over it. Never leave your equipment where someone has to walk around it. Never touch someone else's equipment without their permission. Don't let your ejected cases or holes hit your neighbor. If in doubt, ask. Shooters and range operators are some of the friendliest people you can meet. They'll be happy to lend a hand. Introduce yourself to your neighbors, the people shooting next to you. They may become your next shooting partner. I want to welcome you to the range and hope you have a great time. Remember the 3 safety rules. Always keep the firearm pointed in a safe direction, finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, and always keep the gun unloaded until you're ready to use it. Make sure the action is open whenever it's on the table. We hope you take firearm safety as seriously as we do in the firearm industry. And when you're on the range, remember, firearm safety depends on you.